Around this time, Eartha became involved with a group in Washington, D.C. called Rebels with a Cause. Now, this group worked with kids and teenagers from the inner city who were going down the wrong path. They had either been arrested or were falling behind in school, and they just needed support. Now, normally celebrities wouldn't touch a group like this because it involved kids from underprivileged neighborhoods, and many of them had criminal records. You know, a lot of people just would write them off as like, they're bad, and then that's it. But for Eartha, you know, she grew up in extreme poverty and she had her own personal experience. So she felt like she could speak to the politicians on behalf of these kids. So these kids they wouldn't be just a statistic. You know, someone had to speak up for them. So in 1967, Eartha testified before Congress on behalf of Rebels with a Cause. Her testimony was so moving and impressed Congress so much that they even suggested that she take this work further. They recommended her for a position working with the White House to improve conditions for the kids. This meant that Eartha would be working with the president at the time. The president, a man named Lyndon B. Johnson, aka LBJ. Remember our Weird Presidents episode? This is the dick guy, talking on the phone, on the toilet, whipping his wiener out, and then pranking people with his boat, his car boat. He was a weird president, obsessed with his wiener. So, President Johnson's wife, she went by the nickname Lady Bird. So one day, Lady Bird invited Eartha to a White House charity lunch. Now, this event was put together so women could get around and talk about like the growing crime rates in America's youth. They're like, you guys, what is happening to all of our precious angel babies? What are we gonna do? Now, at this time, kids all over the country, they were rebelling because of the Vietnam War. They were getting arrested for smoking pot, fighting each other, vandalizing buildings, stuff like that. Plus, thousands of them were taking part in protests every day. Technically, allegedly, Eartha did not want to go to this lunch. She said, quote,
I didn't want to go because I thought of the politicians, those luncheons, what are they going to mean? Blah, 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 and that's it.
So Eartha was about to RSVP no, but she gets word that Lady Bird really wanted her to attend. So Eartha's like, fine, I'll go. On January 18th, 1968, Lady Bird takes the mic in front of dozens of guests and started talking about how the, quote, quality of their lives has changed because of the increase in youth crime. Most of the women are nodding along in agreement. Yeah, yeah. So other women, they would take turns with the mic and they would back up what Miss Lady Bird was saying. And they were committed to helping, quote unquote, high crime, low income communities. Thank you. It was essentially a bunch of Karens talking about how they were going to clean up crime without looking at why there was crime in the first place. Meanwhile, they're in like a nice luncheon, nice outfits, nice food. Like, you guys, if you want to clean up the crime, maybe go to the crime and see what's going on there. You're not going to figure it out in your nice luxury room, but okay. Anyhow, so President Johnson actually shows up making a surprise guest appearance. Now, President Johnson was a controversial figure at this time. He was taxing Americans at a crazy high rate, and he was obsessed with keeping the Vietnam War going. Now, people hated him for that. There was a chant at the time that went, hey, LBJ, how many kids did you kill today? Bring it on. President Johnson walks in and allegedly says, quote, I want you all to know how wonderful it is for the first family to invite the common people to have lunch with us. Now, if you're sitting there and you were invited and he just called you common people, okay, do you see the hat I'm wearing? This is not a common person hat. Okay, this was a very expensive hat. Okay, common? Ugh. Anyways, it didn't rub people the right way. So then he starts talking about the delinquent youth problem in America, as if he knows. And then he blames the parents of kids getting in trouble. Now, naturally, everyone is nodding along like, yeah, anything you say, Mr. President, yes, we agree. Now, at that point, remember Eartha's there. She's looking around like, you dumb bitches. She's fuming. She was one of the only people in the room who actually understood what it was like for inner city families and like what their day-to-day looked like. She worked with them all the time. She was there, hands-on, and she had it after President Johnson's little speech. So President Johnson, he's done with his little speech. And he's like, all right, you guys, thank you. And he's like, gonna leave. Well, Eartha, she's like, you know what? Fuck these bitches. She stood up. She blocked his path. And she's very polite. Kind of. She's determined. There's actually footage of this online. And you look it up, it's amazing. It's like, yes. She tells him in a very determined, confident voice.
But what do we do about the new parents? The parents who have to go to work, for instance, who can't spend the time with their children that they should. This is, I think, is our main problem. What do we do with the children then when the parents are off working?
She's asking the truth. She's asking real questions. And she wasn't being a bitch about it. She wasn't being rude. Anyways, so President Johnson, he's kind of like, what the fuck? He's mumbling some kind of half-ass answer and is like...
I think that'd be a very good question for you to ask yourself when you're in your health luncheon.
And then he leaves. So from that point on, Eartha lights a cigarette. She's like, fuck these bitches. Fuck these bitches. Parliament lights, 100s. And she's just stewing, waiting for her moment. She keeps raising her hand to speak, but she's getting ignored. Nothing was really said, but like after Eartha had stood up and done that, you can kind of tell the room is like, I don't know about Eartha. Like, they're not happy with her, but they're not going to say that because they're ladies who lunch. So finally, toward the end of the lunch, Lady Bird tells Eartha, fine, you can take the podium. So Eartha goes up there, takes the podium, and she looks straight into Lady Bird's eyes. And she tells Miss Lady Bird the truth. She tells the room that the youth of America are rebelling because they're angry about their lives being defined by a war that they don't understand. She says also, quote, they don't want to go to school because they're going to be snatched off from their mothers to be shot in Vietnam. I am talking as a mother who has a child, so I know the feeling of having a baby coming out of my guts. And Lady Bird is in the back of the room, just like doing her best to keep eye contact with Eartha so she doesn't seem weak. But it's clear that she is shook by the comments that Eartha was making. She was like, shut up. This is supposed to be a nice luncheon with ladies who lunch. But Eartha then says, quote, you send the best of this country off to be shot and maimed. No wonder the kids rebel and take pot. And Miss Johnson, in case you don't understand the lingo, that's marijuana. Ooh. So, look, it's not even that bad, right? You and I would just be like, okay, well, when Eartha ends her speech, some of the guests, they start crying. You've seen the videos of Karens when they get confronted and they just start crying. That's what they were doing. Some were just pissed off. They were giving Eartha dirty looks. Other guests leaned over and were like, hey girl, you were speaking facts. Thanks for that. So at the end of the lunch, everyone goes to Lady Bird to comfort her, and Eartha just gets ignored. She was like a social pariah at this point. But Eartha's like, whatever, I spoke the truth. Isn't that what this lunch was supposed to be about? Like, okay. And that was it, right? Great. Okay, end of the lunch. Well, unfortunately, this turned into a shit show because that night, newspapers all over the country were printing stories with the headlines saying things like, Eartha Kitt denounces war policy to the Johnsons. They described Eartha as aggressive, disrespectful, and they even went on to say that Eartha made Lady Bird cry. Now, even today, when I was like looking up this story, I kept coming across the fact that she made Lady Bird cry. But the truth is, Lady Bird never cried. Other women did. Get your shit together. But not Lady Bird. But here's what really happened behind the scenes. When President Johnson heard what Eartha did, he was livid. He was already pissed that she had confronted him in the first place, but you're gonna upset my wife? Ugh, you know? He was not having it. So he picks up his phone, probably on the toilet, dig out, and allegedly he called every news network in America and said, I do not want to see that woman on air. Click. And that, baby girl Lisa, was the moment that Eartha was blacklisted everywhere. Ugh. So dumb. Despite this, Eartha stood by what she said, saying that I would do it again. She didn't even do anything that bad. She was just telling the truth. Why are people mad at the truth? I mean, there was like a lot of people on Eartha's side. Moms were tired of their kids going to this war and dying. No one wanted this war. And people would take part in like anti-Vietnam marches holding signs that said, Eartha Kitt speaks for the women of America. But it didn't matter. President Johnson was the president and powerful. So TV shows stopped booking her, radio stations stopped playing her music, any type of event she had got canceled. No one would touch her. And for a while, it seemed like that would be the end of Eartha Kitt. If the president hates you and tells the media to run hit pieces on you, especially back then, you know, it's hard to recover. So Eartha actually talked about this blacklisting, saying, quote, if you tell the truth in a country that says you're entitled to tell the truth, you get your face slapped and you get put out of work, end quote. Which reminds me, do you guys listen to The Clash? I know. I'm just like, so cool. No, but there's, The Clash has a song called Know Your Rights. Great song. But there's this line in it that always like slapped. It slaps because it says along the lines of like, you have the right to free speech, unless you're actually dumb enough to try it. Something like that. And I feel like this is where it kind of applies. You know what I'm saying? Eartha knew that there was one place that would welcome her back with open arms. Europe. She's like, we're going.